some potential red flags as Drake Maye struggles for his third consecutive practice, more on the Matthew Judon contract situation, plus Patriots might actually have a solid offensive line. All of that and more here on PatsCast.
PatsCast, shout aloud, don't you fear. Overcome the demons, bring victory here.
Welcome to PatsCast. I'm Brad Whitaker. The Patriots finished their second padded practice of training camp, coming off of a pretty good offensive day on Monday, with exception to Drake Maye. Monday, Jacoby Brissett played lights out. They were able to establish the run game, had a few big bursts in there, and it looked like the Patriots were starting to build on something a little bit. Well, none of that was really the case on Tuesday in their second padded practice, where not only Drake Maye struggled, but Jacoby Brissett didn't put up great numbers as well. And they actually had very similar numbers. Both quarterbacks went 8 of 15, but the actual outcomes coming from that were very different. Jacoby Brissett had a number of large chunk plays at Tuesday's practice, including the highlight throw and catch of the day on a 20-yard throw, 20-yard touchdown to Jalen Polk. The receivers were practicing sluggo routes, which I'm not an X's and O's guy, but I guess it's like you're running a quick slant and then you take off downfield. That's how Jalen Polk was able to score in the end zone on a 20-yard throw from Jacoby Brissett during 7-on-7s. Brissett also hit Hunter Henry on a 20-yard touchdown throw and had a nice throw to KJ Osborne on a deep crossing route. Whereas Drake Maye, same numbers, 8 of 15, but none of those passes completed were longer than 10 yards. And look, Drake Maye, I'm not upset that he's throwing dinks and dunks out there, that he's taking advantage of checkdowns. A lot of people don't like it, but I like a good checkdown. You know, if your receivers aren't open, take the easy yards, get 3 or 4 yards out of it, and move on to the next play. Tom Brady was better at that than anyone else. That's why they called him Checkdown Tom. It was a point of criticism, but that's the way you keep the offense moving. And Drake Maye didn't really do that as much in college, and that's something he's been doing in the NFL, probably because he's facing the Patriots defense, and players just aren't creating separation. They're not getting open, and Drake Maye's taking the easy throw, which is a good thing, but the other parts of his game are really struggling, particularly with some of the pre-snap issues that he's having. Now, I don't think that's entirely his fault. Drake Maye right now is playing with the second unit, and David Andrews missed the second consecutive practice, hasn't done a padded practice so far. I guess there's some personal issues going on there. Don't know exactly what's happening, but he hasn't been out in the playing field. So that means Nick Leverett has taken over as the starting center, which means Drake Maye, who's working with the second unit, has Antonio Maffey out there, who is really struggling on that offensive line. Had a low snap during Drake Maye's final period at Tuesday's practice, and a lot of pre-snap penalties, a lot of fumbles so far throughout training camp between Maffey and Drake Maye. So is some of that Drake Maye? Sure. He's got to get the cadence down. He's got to understand and read the defense before, keep his players informed, get everything out on time. And he hasn't really done that. But that is part of the learning curve of being an NFL quarterback. That's one of the steepest learning curves. And it's not really that surprising that Drake Maye is struggling there. I think a lot of rookies are going to be struggling there. And they're going to throw picks. Drake Maye certainly thrown his fair share of picks throughout training camp. But even Brock Purdy, first padded practice for the 49ers, threw 3 interceptions. So it's going to happen. Drake Maye, as long as he continues to improve, then great. I'm probably not going to start week 1 at this point, but look, we're on the second padded practice. Like, things are going to change between now and end of August before we head into week 1 of the NFL season. So let's not worry too much about it. I'm tired of the comparisons from Michael Hawley saying, I saw the ghost of Mac Jones at Monday's practice. Drake Maye and Mac Jones could not be any different. Mac Jones was actually very NFL ready. We just knew there were limitations there in terms of his arm strength, what happens after he gets hit, his mental toughness. So they picked a player that is the polar opposite of Mac Jones. Very mentally tough, a guy with tremendous arm strength, the second strongest arm in the entire NFL draft, and they took the guy with the strongest arm, Joe Milton, at the very end of the draft, but couldn't be more different than Mac Jones. And because of that, he's more raw and he's less out-of-the-box NFL ready than Mac Jones was. But the idea is he continues to develop, and suddenly you have a guy who's on par with Justin Herbert and Josh Allen, who Drake Maye has been compared to. So let's give it some time. Let's stop with these Mac Jones comparisons. Mac Jones was tremendous his first training camp. That's why he won the job over Cam Newton. He had a great rookie year, almost won Rookie of the Year. But we all know what happened there because of the mental stuff, because of the limitations of his inability to work with new offensive coordinators. That's why Mac Jones failed. If Drake Maye fails in New England, it's not going to be because of his arm strength or anything like that. It's going to be because he just isn't able to adapt to running an NFL offense. But it takes time to learn these things. And when you have Antonio Maffey, the third string center, who isn't even really a center, frankly, snapping the ball to Drake Maye, there's going to be issues there. I would really like to see him get some reps with the ones. Now, that's something Drake Maye is going to have to earn, and I'm not sure if we're ever going to see that throughout training camp, and certainly the preseason, assuming Jacoby Brissett is starting all 3 games. I want to see Drake Maye out there with David Andrews snapping him the ball with the top unit, throwing to the top receivers, going against the top New England defense, and then we can get a better idea of just how much he's improved throughout training camp, but it's still early. And Patriots, if they think he has a shot at starting week 1, they're going to give him some reps with the ones. But the fact that he hasn't really had any so far tells you that he's not even close. And that's okay, because Jacoby Brissett, even though he had an okay practice today, he had a great practice yesterday, and he's been contributing to chunk plays even when he struggles out there. And the good news is I think we're actually starting to see an offensive line come together, even if they struggled a little bit today relative to Monday. Caden Wallace back starting at left tackle. Really good to see. The Patriots took him as a right tackle out of Penn State with the idea that they could convert him fairly quickly. Well, he's getting the reps with the first team at left tackle once again. And this is actually his 4th consecutive practice with the ones at left tackle. So really good to see that. Hopefully he stays there throughout the rest of training camp. The Patriots have been moving players around, trying to find the ideal unit, but same unit as yesterday. And because we're seeing that, I think it's safe to say at this point that this may be the starting offensive line when we get to week 1. Subbing out David Andrews with Nick Leverett. But Caden Wallace did struggle a little bit today, had a few bad losses in the one-on-one pass drills, but did maintain his spot with the first-team offense, like I said, for the 4th consecutive practice. So hopefully he continues to improve. Really impressed with him just at the microphone. Seems like a guy who knows what he's doing, has a good head on his shoulders, really taking the coaching well. And the fact that he's already at left tackle tells you that that's his job, and it's really up to him to win it or lose it at this point. But it sounds like he's already won it, as long as he continues to improve and play at a high level. But good to see him out there. If he can become a real solid NFL left tackle, well, that goes a long way. That is perhaps the 2nd most important position, not just on the offense, on an NFL team. So Caden Wallace, a lot riding on his shoulders, but he's back out there at left tackle. Sidy Sow, back out at left guard. I think it's safe to say until Cole Strange comes back, whether that's midseason or next year or 20 years down the road. I don't know what's going on with Cole Strange. No one does. But Sidy Sow is going to be your starting left guard. He continued to be a solid presence out there with the first team unit. No issues really today in practice with Sidy Sow. David Andrews, like I said, missed the 2nd straight practice for personal reasons. So Nick Leverett, the guard that they took from Tampa Bay, who they're taking snaps with at center here in New England, he filled in once again with the first team. He's actually done a pretty good job. He really struggled with the cadence and learning the offense early on in minicamp, but he's looked pretty good so far in training camp. So good to see Nick Leverett doing a solid job at center, and maybe he's your backup. You also have Jake Andrews, who's been missing some practices with an injury, so we'll see how that factors in down the road. Mike Onwenu continuing to play at right guard, not right tackle, even though the Patriots signed him expecting him to be the right tackle. Well, he's at right guard, and he's an all-pro caliber right guard, so I'm really not too worried about that. And then you had Chuks Okorafor, who we thought would be the bridge at left tackle, playing at right tackle for another practice. Had a bit of an up-and-down day, showing both strengths and weaknesses during team drills and in one-on-one pass rush sessions. So that seems to be what we can expect from the starting offensive line at this point going forward. A lot could change. Perhaps a lot will change, but as of right now, if I had to guess, the starting offensive line week 1 will be Caden Wallace at left tackle. Good to see. Sidy Sow at left guard. David Andrews at center. Michael Wenu at right guard. And then you have Chuks Okorafor at right tackle. But guys like Calvin Anderson, who missed most of last year with malaria, believe it or not, alongside Vidarian Lowe, kind of alternated between left and right tackle with the second unit today. That's going to be important because guys are going to go down. Don't love Vidarian Lowe. I don't think anyone loves Vidarian Lowe, but Calvin Anderson, probably going to be the backup tackle there as of right now. But if Chuks Okorafor doesn't work out at right tackle, you could always insert Calvin Anderson there, or you put Calvin Anderson at left tackle, put Caden Wallace or Okorafor at right tackle. There's a lot of different combinations they can do, but right now it looks like Calvin Anderson is with the second unit. Layden Robinson, remember him. He's the guard that the Patriots drafted in the 4th round. Really looked great in one-on-ones. Hasn't seen a lot of action with the first-team offense, but he's been knocking around veteran defenders, and that's really good to see. That's a guy that is probably going to be a starter at the guard position eventually, maybe not this season, perhaps if somebody goes down, but he's looked really solid so far in training camp, and that's a guy that you can insert at right guard if you want to move Wenu back to right tackle. If Sidy Sow's not working out at left guard, or he gets hurt, or Cole Strange comes back and doesn't do a lot, Layden Robinson's a great option, and perhaps he'll be on that starting line by next season, or maybe as soon as this season if he continues to develop, but that's really good to see. But the O-line did have a challenging day. They were exceptional on Monday in terms of run blocking, implementing that wide zone scheme, which I thought would take a lot longer. A lot of big chunk plays on the ground from Stevenson, Gibson, and Harris. Not really the same story on Tuesday. They had some success on the ground, but there were run stuffs on nearly half of the team's handoffs. So it looked kind of like the Matt Patricia wide zone scheme and not necessarily the Alex Van Pelt wide zone scheme that we saw on Monday. So it was a bit of a step back, but it's going to take some time. And look, they're going against an elite defense, and that's something you always have to remember is all of these guys are being tested against some real solid NFL defensive players, and they're going to have bad practices, but they had a really good one, the offensive line, yesterday, and once you have David Andrews back out there, I would expect them to improve a little bit, but today they allow consistent pressure and disruptions from the defensive line, so there's a lot of areas to improve, but it's nice that we at least have an idea at this point what that starting offensive line is going to look like. Like I said, the running backs really didn't do a lot compared to yesterday. Ramondre Stevenson did have a long run in the opening of the 11-on-11s period, but didn't do much after. Antonio Gibson had a strong start and then cooled off. Did get quite a few catches on checkdowns from Drake Maye and Jacoby Brissett, but no significant burst coming from that. And then Kevin Harris really struggled today, had a fumbled handoff late in practice. And look, a lot of that has to do with the defense. Keon White looks to be the best defender on the field. Really good to see that happening. Constant disruptions in today's practice. Had 2 run stuffs, so he was a big reason why the running game couldn't get going. Josh Uche, who got kicked out of practice yesterday, rebounded, had a would-be sack today. Jabril Peppers missed practice for whatever reason, so Joshua Bledsoe stepped in for him and had a number of deflections, so he filled in well. So much depth on that defense, and that's the thing. That's part of the reason Elliott Wolf isn't rushing these contract extensions with Godshaw and Matt Judon, which I'll get to in just a moment, but you have so much depth on that defense that you lose Peppers, you put Bledsoe out there, and it's seamless. There's continuity, and we see that, and that's, again, a big reason why the offense is struggling. Marco Wilson had an okay day, allowed 2 catches, but had a pass deflection and a fumble recovery. So good to see that happening as well. But like I said, Matthew Judon had a bad practice yesterday. Didn't practice at all. Didn't come out in pads. Was wearing sweats, sitting on a trash can and on the team equipment, kind of pouting. Got into it with Gerard Mayo. Left practice, came back, got into it with Matt Groh and Elliott Wolf. Left practice again. And this is a real test for Gerard Mayo, perhaps his first test as an NFL head coach. Being the players' coach, I'm open. I'm okay with players expressing their opinions. We'd like to get an air hockey table, and we have video games in the locker room. That's Jerod Mayo's reputation right now, and as expected, that's starting to crack a little bit. And Matt Judon is testing the limits with him. And Bill Belichick had a policy. If you're holding in, you're holding out, we don't want to see you on the practice field. We don't want you standing around. It's a bad look. It sets a poor standard. Stay in the facility. We don't want to deal with that. You can hold in. That's between you and your agent and me, and we'll figure that out, but we don't want you to be a distraction. Well, Matthew Judon, who has handled this situation relatively well, and you understand where he's coming from to a certain point, handled his situation very well up until Monday with his little incident, but he wasn't seen anywhere today. So is this a formal holdout? Was he fined $50,000, which is what happens with players if they choose to hold out? I don't know, but he wasn't seen at the facility, and he certainly wasn't seen on the practice field today. Whereas Devon Godshaw was on the practice field, a bit limited, similar to Monday, but it's kind of the opposite of what we saw last week between Godshaw and Judon. I think Godshaw understands that he only plays about 50% of the snaps, so he doesn't exactly have the same case that Matthew Judon has. I mean, Matthew Judon has a very strong case to be upset, but you also have to understand he has zero leverage. All right, he's getting paid just north of $6 million this season. A player of his caliber, when healthy, when on the field all the time, should be making almost $25 million a year. And Matthew Judon has said on podcasts, I've written out my contract and handed it to the Patriots and waiting to hear back, and they're not countering with anything, and everything's just kind of stalled. And Judon was handling everything very well last week, but I think Patriots had an off day on Saturday. He spent the weekend at his house, upset, stewing, thinking in his head about how he's getting screwed, how I'm a $20+ million a year defensive player, and I'm only getting paid $6. I'm only asking for 15 or 18 or whatever he's asking for. Maybe he is asking for 20, which probably is unreasonable considering he's coming off of a bicep injury and he's getting up there in age. But you understand why he's upset. And then he came back on Monday and really pouted and was a completely different person than what we're used to seeing Matthew Judon. So I hope the Patriots don't reward that. If we find out tomorrow that Matthew Judon has been extended for 3 seasons on a lucrative contract, I'll celebrate because, yay, we had Matthew Judon for a few years, but it sends the wrong message, and you do not want to reward that. And like I said, this is a massive test, not only for Jerod Mayo, who's starting to see some cracks in the armor with his very open policy as a head coach, but for Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh. You shouldn't be negotiating with his agent this week. You should let this cool off a little bit and then come back next week when it's simmered down and then sign him to a contract extension if possible and find a meeting point. Maybe that's 12, 13, 14 million and Judon understands I'm coming off of an injury. Maybe you just kick some money to him for this year and say, look, we're going to pay you this year, but you got to prove it. And if you prove it, then we'll give you a good contract as we head into next offseason. But right now, I hope some bridges aren't burned. Judon's had a good relationship with Jerod Mayo. I mean, Mayo has coached him directly for a few years now and really looks up to him, and game recognizes game between those two. Two very strong defensive players, but perhaps two egos there, and that's why they butted heads yesterday. And you understand where Judon's coming from, but he handled this very poorly. So, look, I hope they can come to terms. I just hope it doesn't happen in the coming days because Jerod Mayo has to send a message that we can't have this type of behavior on the practice field. And perhaps he has. Perhaps that's why we didn't see Matthew Judon at the facility. Maybe it wasn't a formal holdout. Maybe Judon didn't get fined and they worked it out and said, take a week off. We don't want to hear from you. Let's cool this off a little bit. We'll be in contact with your agent by this weekend. But take some time. You're not going to get fined. And we'll go forward there. I'm just guessing. I'm speculating. I have no idea if that's what happened. But I think that probably would be the right way of handling this, and maybe that is what Jerod Mayo did. And if it is, then that's a good sign because the open culture looks great. It sounds fun until players start revolting, until you start losing games, And that's really going to be the test. Gerard Mayo's been very open with the media throughout, ever since he got hired as head coach. A little too open, in my opinion. That's going to change when the Patriots go on a losing streak, which many people don't expect them to be a good team. They think it's inevitable. We'll see how Gerard Mayo handles it if that's the case. But Matthew Judon, I hope he gets extended, but I hope it doesn't happen for a little bit now. And same with Godchaux. I mean, Godchaux's a good player. He doesn't have the same argument that Matthew Judon has. So we'll see what happens there going forward. The Patriots are off tomorrow, and they will resume practice at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday. Unless there's any breaking news, we won't be back until then, but we'll be sure to cover the next padded Patriots training camp practice on Thursday. Hopefully Drake Maye bounces back. You know, he has a reputation as a resilient quarterback, mentally tough, a guy who gets hit hard and bounces back on the next play. 3 consecutive bad practices, if you count Sunday without the pads. Not a good look so far. Some red flags. We've seen some issues with his footwork, his mechanics, and things that are bubbling up that it looked like he had solved, but things get a little bit different when you're wearing pads and you're out there going against everyone playing at full strength, playing 100%. He's not taking hits, obviously, but wearing the red practice jersey. Also, something to note, Demario Douglas was back out in the field today in a red practice jersey, so that was good to see. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler if he is healthy and plays all 17 games. I've bought stock in Demario Douglas, and I think it's going to take off quite a bit this season. But that's it for this episode of PatsCast. If you like this video, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or be sure to subscribe if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Maybe back tomorrow if there's some breaking news or developments on the Matthew Judon situation. Otherwise, we'll see you Thursday after the 3rd padded training camp practice. We'll see you then.
In the shadows, casting doubts, yeah, every mistakes. Trying to find a way, but the road it quakes. PatsCast echo calling from the stands. Rookie stumble, fumble, gotta make this stand.